I'm Vance Bastion here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 10 Episode 24 interview. We'll be talking with Michael G. Williams, that's right, he's back in the hot seat, and discussing his Servant Sovereign series as well as his novel Children of Solitude. So if you haven't listened to his previous episodes, let me introduce our guest. Michael G. Williams writes queer-themed speculative fiction, celebrating the unexpected ways we outsiders find ourselves and our people at the heart of the mysterious and the macabre. He's a member of HWA and SFWA and is on the NC Writers Network Board of Trustees. He also co-hosts Arcane Carolinas, an award-winning podcast about the myths and legends of his native region. Michael studied performance studies at UNC Chapel Hill and Appalachian Studies at Appalachian State, and is a brother in both Mu Beta Psi and St. Anthony Hall. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really,
Our,
really good to be here.
our pleasure. It's great to get to catch up with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what have you been doing since your last interview?
Uh, Everything. I went on this epic 10-month journey to try to get an agent that did
Really?
not result in getting an agent at all. Instead, it resulted in me deciding that that is not
For
for
you.
me.
Fair.
Um, I had a lot of really interesting experiences, some really interesting email exchanges.
Hmm.
I have been told repeatedly that talking about numbers from an agent search is deadly and will mean that I never get an agent in the future. And I don't like gatekeeping.
Hmm.
So I readily tell people that I queried 140 agents. I had about a 3% response rate that was interest.
Wow.
And I've been told by the two other people who would tell me their numbers that that is exactly what they had also. And um, of the interested responses, I had a couple that were getting pretty close, maybe, to saying
Hmm.
yes. Um, but I got really tired of waiting and had an offer from a publisher that I really like and said, I'm just going to take it and called off the agent search. I also had some spectacularly rude responses from agents,
Really?
and not many, but enough to have noted them.
Uh-huh.
And it was a real journey, but it was funny. The more people told me no about Children of Solitude, the more I liked the book because almost always their response told me that for whatever reason, it was not for them. And that's totally valid. That's cool. Nothing is
Hmm.
for anybody.
Hmm.
Nothing is for everybody. But the things they didn't like about it were things that I love about it. And so I was just like, oh, I did write these for myself, and that's okay. That's all I really need.
Hmm.
I think
Well
at this
then,
stage in the game, it's really the most that we really need as authors is a publicist, not really an agent. Because I think publicists move in those circles that they can get wind of things. And so you can kind of use them as a bellwether because they see the trends in what they're publicizing, who they're carrying, and I think that's a way you could backdoor to get to an agent that is more of a fit. But I don't, I think here's the other side of it too. Hollywood's changing. Everything, all media is in a dynamic shift right now. We're going through a paradigm shift. And when that happens, everything breaks down. Everything
hmm,
goes wonky for a while until we all figure out the new paradigm,
right.
Hmm.
you know?
Well,
It's
let's put a pin in Children of Solitude because you love it. I want to finish with it.
okay.
So let's talk about Servant Sovereign, the series.
So that's a series that I got contracted to write for Falstaff Books.
Hmm.
It was going to be a four novella series of time travel stories, urban fantasy time travel stories.
Hmm.
And my initial proposal was what if modern day witches who lived in the Tenderloin in San Francisco realized that San Francisco is under assault by a demon of real estate?
Well, it
And
is.
right, like,
It is. That's
yeah,
called Thursday in San Francisco.
right.
I can swear to it.
I feel like the fantasy part of it is like it's not even in fantasy land,
Right.
when you describe
Right.
it that. Um, and so they summon the greatest hero that they can think of from San Francisco's past, Emperor Norton,
Of
Hmm.
course.
back into the world of the living
Of
and
course.
say, we're going to send you on these time travel adventures to go collect the keys to the city so that we can save its soul because their belief is that the city has a soul and that that's what the demon is after.
Hmm.
And so I got to write this really fun series of novellas about this demon named Mammon who is like just unrepentantly evil and just like really revels in the horrible things he does and does things like show up to satanic ceremonies held by tech bros, you know, and
As it
run
happens. Yeah.
right as it happens. He runs a a short-term rental company that he can use to hollow out a neighborhood, things like that. And Emperor Norton, meanwhile, gets sent on these like time travel adventures where he goes to the Great Earthquake and Fire, for
Mhm.
instance, to
Mhm.
save the original Bear Republic flag, which in reality was destroyed in that fire.
Right.
Or he goes to the 1920s to go run around with Donald Cameron in Chinatown and stuff like that. Gets to go like do gold rush stuff, gets to go do stuff in the 20s with gangsters. Really, really fun series. And I went into it as a total pantser,
Hmm.
having no plan for the series other than we'll just see what happens. We'll see what seems fun each time I sit down to write it. And so I got to play with a lot of things that I really enjoy in stories. I
Hmm.
love time travel stories. I love alternate timeline stories. So there are like moments in the series where different characters get sucked into an alternate version of San Francisco and they get to see how things would have been different if. And got to have a lot of fun with it. And in the meantime, totally surprised myself with what was happening, which ultimately that's the best possible outcome when writing a
Right.
book. And then the fourth volume, which I wrote, never got published. So I said to the publisher with whom I'm on very good terms, none of this
Mhm.
is a slight. I said, could I have the rights back to that series? Because I want to make sure that the fourth book comes out. And they said, sure, here you go. And so I repackaged them together with that fourth volume as a standalone omnibus edition called Servant Sovereign. And each of the volumes was originally named using a quote from a an obituary of Emperor Norton.
Hmm.
So the first one, uh, I just forgot the first one. Anyway, the last one was going to be named "The Last Scene of a Strange Career." And so like they all have these like incredibly complicated names. I write like weirdly alienating academic stuff, and so I named them accordingly. But Servant Sovereign was just like the perfect title for it because he's an emperor, but he is also sort of this like thought form that has been summoned and is controlled by these witches, but the more he does for them, the more they're tied together. So it's a lot of it was a lot of the point of the story was San Francisco is the sort of place where people set out with a plan, and that plan does not survive meeting reality.
Right.
And whatever happens to them, a lot of times they grow and change in ways that they did not expect, and they evolve in ways that they did not expect. And San Francisco, in my limited experience of it, is a place where people have a unique ability to go there and remake themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the point of the story is people who went to San Francisco and remade themselves and getting to talk about why and why that's empowering for them.
Hmm.
And so it was not surprising to me necessarily to start writing the book and have it turn into something totally different. So that like by the end it has a totally different villain. By the end it has a totally different cast of characters who are all on the same side. Like it was a very shocking experience to me to have even as a pantser, to have a book go so totally off what I had thought its plan would be. And it just seemed fitting for a story about San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah.
And witches and demons. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll
Yeah.
verify that being a former San Franciscan. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
verify that.
Right. Exactly. You know,
Well, so back in 2022, we talked to you about this series when you had first embarked on it, and the title I remember was Through the Doors of Oblivion.
thank you. Yes. Through the doors. Wow. My brain. I am totally fried.
It's okay, you're a word person. You see a lot of them on a daily basis.
Yes.
So, hearing how the series has progressed and come together, one, I love it. I love that you've put them all together in a full-length novel.
Hmm.
Is there a time period you had the most fun writing?
Hmm. Yes. The third book. in the series, the like part three of the
Hmm.
omnibus. It's called Shut the Gates of Mercy.
Hmm.
And it is about the characters having to go to the Compton's cafeteria riot
Mm,
of 1966.
hmm.
Nice.
And um, it got, I say this, when I laugh, when I say this, I laugh with genuine humor about this. I think this is hysterically funny. So it got a really bad review from someone who read the first part, which includes a real historical figure who was an anti-corruption police officer
Hmm.
in the time of the Great Fire. And and this person got really upset that it included a police officer and was not more critical of police. And they said in their review that after they read that, they stopped reading it. And I was like, if you had just kept reading, you would have seen the book that was 30,000 words of them fighting the San Francisco Police Department. Um, but anyway, the Compton's cafeteria riots, if people are not familiar with them, was sort of the Stonewall before one of the Stonewalls before Stonewall.
Hmm.
Happened in San Francisco. A lot of trans women and some gay male hustlers were nightly patrons of a restaurant called Compton's Cafeteria. They were taken advantage of by the staff, harassed by police. Eventually, they had enough, and there was a 2 day long battle,
Hmm.
basically, which
Hmm.
the queer people won. So the San
Hmm.
Francisco Police Department buried it, and they didn't allow any news coverage of it, and people didn't hear about it for a long time, to the point that today we don't know the names of a lot of the people who were involved. We know the names of some of
Yeah.
them.
There was actually an episode of the reboot or the updated Tales of the City 2019 where they did one episode that was dedicated to the whole Compton's affair that happened. And I think there is like a making of where they talk about how they did the research for it and actually name some of the names that they do have from that era and some of the stories. Because I remember seeing an interview with one of the queens from that era who was still alive at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and talked about what it was like at that event. So yeah, you can find it up. It's up on YouTube, the documentary part of it, the making of kind of it. But yeah, definitely if people are curious, go check out the 2019 kind of revisit of Bar Barbary Coast, and you get to see the story about Compton's kind of played out, So it's kind of an interesting way to kind of absorb what happened 3 years prior to
Nice.
Stonewall.
Yeah.
Nice.
And there's a KQED documentary that
Mm-hmm,
was
hmm.
made that's also on YouTube called, if I remember correctly, it's called Screaming Queens.
Yes, yes.
And yeah, and it's fascinating. It's like 50 minutes long or so, 55 minutes. It's not very long, but it's deep, deep research, deeply informative, so good, and just really eye-opening about how on the cusp of what we would think of as modern queer life people were living at that time, and at the same time how far from the things that we take for granted today, even in the current environment,
Right.
so much that we still take for granted was
Mhm.
totally unavailable to
Yeah.
queer people then,
Right.
and just really fascinating to me. That was one of my favorite things to get to research, and I felt like I learned so much.
I will say when I went to Pride in 2016, it was the 50th anniversary of the Comptons.
Hmm.
And it was really funny because San Franciscans knew their history, their queer history. They had a full contingent of Comptons, like people with banners and stuff and holding up pictures of some of the people from that era. So yeah, San Francisco remembers its history. It's safe with the people of San Francisco.
That's so
Nice.
wonderful. That's
Yeah.
so wonderful. It's something that I honestly had never heard of until maybe 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And I thought that I was really well informed, and I feel like I probably am really well informed. There's just so much queer history that we never learn
And so much
about.
that was covered over, straight washed. There's,
Hmm.
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff plays into it. Yeah, so it's good. I mean, and
Yeah.
it's also good that you wrote about it because that there's a in Marin, there's the Marin County Library that's in San Rafael, and it has a library in there that it's the building was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and it's in the movie Gattaca. If you've ever
Mm.
seen that movie,
Hmm.
that's the Marin Civic Center, and in there's a library, and in the library there is a room called the California Room. And if you go in there, it's got all this historic, it's just a treasure trove of just fascinating stuff. And I think the thing I found, because I had to do, I wrote a story that's going to take place in that place. And I sat in that room for several hours combing over stuff. The thing I love the most was that at one point, because the city was evolving so fast during the gold rush, they didn't have the means to build buildings really fast. So they took ships and inverted them, put them upside
Hmm.
down, and made them into buildings along the wharf. And so, ceilings became floors, and it's just kind of interesting. All these quirky things that add to that mystique of that city, which
Hmm.
is, to say every city has those kinds of things that give it its character, its soul, as you said.
Yeah. Another of my favorite things that I learned about was that before the advent of municipal fire departments were commercial enterprises and they would compete with each other to the
Hmm.
point that they would get in fights over who got to put out the fire before the fire would get put out,
Yeah.
which was really surprising to me. And also maybe not that
And if you didn't
surprising.
make your payments, they would let it burn.
Oh yeah, totally,
Hmm.
absolutely. Imagine a subscription service.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure that there's some libertarian out there who thinks that's a really great idea. I think that's a really
No,
terrible idea.
no, let's not privatize emergency
Mm-mm.
services.
Yeah.
Yeah, mm-mm. No, no. Let's like pay for that as a public good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the answer to that really though is like every era. And the last one, I have them just like leaping through the last part of of Servant Sovereign. They're just like leaping through different eras because I kept being like, okay, well, I really need a scene in North Beach in the 1950s. I really need a scene in Chinatown in the 1920s again. I really need, there were so many times that I needed to be able to talk about because I loved reading about them so much. You know, there's a scene where a character walks into a room where a bunch of bootleggers are storing their booze in a secret room, in a real secret room in a real hotel in downtown San Francisco that still exists and is apparently now like, if you ask nicely, they'll show you the secret room. And if I remember correctly, it's St. Mark's, but I don't remember now. But anyway, I needed a scene where a character saw that because that's so cool.
Hmm.
There's just so much cool history in San Francisco
Yeah.
that I couldn't talk about. I couldn't write the book without talking about everything I could possibly talk about.
Love that. So, because we need to move on to the other book, I'm going to ask,
Yeah.
is there anything about Servant Sovereign we didn't ask or cover that you still want people to know?
Ultimately, it is a book about how people who have different priorities and different understandings of each other and different ideas of themselves, and whose idea of themselves is something they've had to fight for, and so they cling to it very cautiously and very protectively, can also learn to live side by side with comrades who are not exactly like them. And
Nice.
sometimes that's challenging for us.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that that's a really important part of it.
The art of compromise.
Yeah.
Hmm. All right. Children of Solitude, the book you loved that had to be out in the world no matter what everybody else said.
Oh, yeah.
If I were to see it before you on a table at a Pride event this month, and I were to say, "Oh my God, what's this about?" What would be your elevator pitch?
It's about a guy named Reginald who is a mean queen whose awful mother is finally dead. And he has gone to clean out her house only to discover that it is haunted or possibly worse. And his favorite porn star inexplicably lives next door. And now he has to decide, should he just burn the place down and never come back? Or should he see if he can make something happen with that porn star? And that's the book.
Oh my God,
Because
so
why
much to.
not?
Yeah, why not? Every horror novel, because like this is horror.
Mhm.
It's not gore horror. It's ambiance horror. It's
Hmm.
like high dread, low blood on the page,
Sure.
horror. But every horror novel needs every like protagonist of every horror novel needs a compelling reason to stay
Yeah.
and a compelling reason to leave. Because otherwise, like when I'm watching a horror movie or reading a horror novel and there's not a compelling reason to stay, I'm just
Yeah.
like, why don't they just leave? Just like
Right.
get out of there. Just
Right.
leave.
Right.
And his reaction to discovering that there are supernatural things afoot in his mother's house on his ancestral Appalachian homestead is, well, I should just set it on fire and leave. It's not
Hmm.
like it was important to me. I left 20 years ago. Um, oh, but there's that really hot guy, and he just can't say no. And the fact that that's what it's about, that it's about what I think is really essential to the queer experience of having, in many of our lives, we find ourselves in circumstances that give us a really compelling reason to get out of whatever circumstance we're in and really compelling reasons to stay. And we find ourselves sort of hovering in midair between those two for the rest of our lives to some degree or another,
Hmm.
and constantly asking ourselves if we've made the right choices either way.
Yeah.
I really needed to represent that somehow in a horror novel. And getting to do that in this book was very personal and really satisfying and really fun. I
Hmm.
also really like writing horror in general. I
Uh-huh.
feel like horror prepares us for reality. Uh,
Well, it's something
we,
that we as queer people, I think, are ideally suited to write
mhm,
because it's all about othering. And we,
mhm.
who knows more about othering, than queer people because it's across all races. We all experience it as queer people. We know what horrors, literal horrors, can come from it. And so it's a genre built for the LGBTQ creator content sphere.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, for like 7 months, I've been making notes as I listened to Rote because there would be episodes where you would say something that I would think, oh, I need to remember to bring that up when I'm on. Um, and in the episode where y'all talked to Christian Baines,
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
you specifically said horror allows the telling of intimate stories. And that phrase, like, just like lodged in my brain. I was driving down the road and I was like, I have to remember that. I have to remember that. I have to remember that. And when I got to where I was going, I like immediately pulled out my phone and wrote it down because I feel like horror does. It is uniquely suited to letting us tell really intimate, personal stories
Mm,
because it's about what we're afraid of. And whatever we're afraid of is really a commentary on what we want. Because almost always what we're afraid of is a threat to what we want. And I feel like really compelling horror is always about that. And I just feel like there's something really deep and intimate and personal there in the psyche of the character and of the writer and of the reader when we get
Hmm.
horror that really scratches that itch. Um, I also really wanted to talk about the queer experience of sex work
mm,
Hmm.
mhm,
because this porn star is a fully realized human being. Yeah,
mhm,
his public life is mostly of being an object of fantasy,
Right.
but he is a person with like a complicated backstory. And a big part of the story is Reginald not feeling safe, but feeling like he has no other option than to become a little emotionally vulnerable by talking about some of his own experiences.
Hmm.
And Lewis, his romantic interest in the book, um, responds to that by sort of letting some of his guard down. And I feel like that is a very powerful part of the queer experience. Like, sure, everybody in any real kind of relationship has had to do that to some degree.
Hmm.
Queer people, I think, especially have to trauma bond a lot of times,
mm.
and they have to trauma dump. And uh, Lewis and Reginald really do like find themselves in a moment of very high stress and anxiety. They just like trauma dump all over each other, just like it all comes out, everything that they're ever afraid of anybody else ever finding out. And I've had somebody like stop reading to email me to say, like, that is a really powerful scene, which was really nice to hear
It is great.
because it's like a lot of the stuff in it is stuff that is from my life, and it's Anne Rice used to always say that her best writing advice, and I agree, was write the part of yourself that you're most scared somebody else would read.
Yep.
And I feel like that's very true. And like those parts of the queer experience where people are really afraid of like letting somebody see the real them, the them
Hmm.
that has had to put on a front since they were like 9. Um, that part is really powerful. That's a really powerful part of it. And as a sex worker, Lewis has had to become really good at knowing when to put up the shields and drop the shields and put up the shields and drop the shields. And so that whole idea of like, what do I want? What is a danger to it? What is required for me to allow somebody else into my emotional zone of not being in control anymore?
Hmm.
All that stuff is a really big question for them. And that came up. I wrote that down after listening to your interview with Dale Corvino. So I'm also a huge fan of City of Night. I kind of wanted to touch some of that in writing this, and represent some of that there.
Wow.
So I don't know. This book was like really personal for me. It's about an Appalachian person. I'm from Appalachia. It's
Hmm.
about a person who has a really complicated relationship that has been strained to the point of essentially non-existence with his biological family. That is very much the case for me. Uh, I decided that I just don't need to have anything to do with a lot of people who cling to beliefs and attitudes and voting habits and things like that that are really dangerous to the rest of us.
Hmm.
So, have to look out for myself and draw some boundaries there.
Yeah. Yep.
And Reginald is somebody who has drawn a lot of boundaries in his life and really stuck to them.
Right.
And the events of the novel challenge those boundaries and also validate those boundaries. And I felt like horror was just like the best possible place to write a book where I could say to other queer people, hey, yeah, we are actually all in this together, and we're all experiencing it individually at all times and are a little afraid to do anything together. Because that sort of emotional vulnerability is really terrifying a lot of times.
Hmm.
And yeah, that feeling that you're constantly in danger, that's valid.
Yeah.
I feel like horror is a unique place for queer characters to be looking around and saying, actually, we're all in danger and nobody believes me, but I know that we're all in danger and
Right.
I know that that's real.
Yep.
And I don't know, horror is just a really special place to get to tell that kind of story.
It really is. There's a lot in that book.
There is, and at the same time, it's funny. Um, at one point, Lewis says to Reginald, did you just ask me on our first date and it's to your mother's funeral? You know, and it's just like, it's fun. It's funny. Um, Horror, it gives us a lot of opportunities to write good comedy that comes from a place of, I'm going to say this because otherwise I'm going to be screaming.
Hmm.
And that's always fun. Horror and comedy both operate on the same mechanic, which is subverted expectation.
Right.
And I really love getting to walk the line between horror and comedy in the same scene.
Hmm.
But I really wanted to write a book about a character who was the sort of person that the average reader would probably find unlikable.
Uh-huh.
But queer people would look at and say, either I know that guy or I am that guy, and see themselves and understand why he has the attitudes and why he presents the way that he presents,
Hmm.
and see themselves in that and feel validated in that.
I love that. And you cycle through emotions, so there's no like constant dread that's so long that the reader gets fatigued.
Oh yeah, no, it's a horror novel and there are terrible things and people die, but also people get laid because that's
Right.
life.
Well,
Yeah,
And there are witty one-liners. Like I said, you cycle through the emotions.
yeah, you know. I got to do a lot of processing of stuff. My therapist assures me that he is excited to read it. Uh,
he'll give you the Cliff Notes version back.
yeah, I was like, well, you've already heard all of it, but yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a really, really fun novel. The people who have given me feedback have enjoyed it a great deal, and I'm really pleased. I feel really relieved that the people who have read it and talked to me about it have not yet said, "Oh my God, what were you thinking?" Instead, they have said, "Wow, I get it."
Nice. It is outselling, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's out in the world.
totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was an opportunity to work with a new publisher, Gold Dust Publishing out of Winston-Salem. They do queer speculative fiction. Specifically, they do a lot of queer horror,
Nice.
and they go for the Stephen King than the I don't know, whatever the blood drenched thing would be, and they go for ambiance. And so we really, really vibed about
Well,
it, just really got
I
along.
think also, we're having a renaissance of horror. Now with Sinners out and the way that Coogler has kind of brought back horror in the way that it's deeply psychological, very, very
Hmm.
spiritual, and that the horror element is what's used to examine the humanity in the characters that are
Hmm.
presented. And I think that's why it's been so impactful, is that, and queer people see Sinners and see safe space for themselves because they know that's a place they would have gone to,
Hmm.
and that's one of the things I think I love about this renaissance of horror as it's coming up now. People are being more excited about the genre than ever before. And I think they're also much more discerning. They don't want just garbage horror. They
Hmm.
want some horror with some meat on the bone, something they can go back and talk with their friends about. Which is why I think Interview with the Vampire, the series, has done so well because it gave so much for people to chew on, at the proverbial water cooler with their friends.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it allows us to re-examine our humanity, our perceptions, which is what I love writing about, and actually give us a way to deepen our characters when we write in that space with those intents. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Horror is at its best when there's a really compelling human drama
Mm-hmm.
at the
Hmm.
heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the horror is just a way to talk about that drama in a new light, in my opinion.
Well, yeah.
Like,
I mean, even like Penny Dreadful when John Logan did it, the horror was so well done because you cared about the characters, and it was just a titillating little giggle that they were all familiar horror characters
yeah.
in the story itself. So you kind of had that little giggle factor going, oh, this is kind of cute. You got Dorian Gray. You had all these things placed in there, things that are sentimental to us, especially horror fanatics. Plus the fact that I like watching horror, especially when I'm sick in bed. I want to see somebody who's having a worse time than me, so for me, it's like uplifting.
Yeah. But Sinners is just like such a powerful set of stories.
Hmm.
And it would work as a drama even without the horror elements.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And that's
And
almost universally what people have said when
mhm,
they watched it. They say that.
mhm,
They say, I was in, even if you never brought the vampire in, I was still interested in what was going down,
mhm.
you know?
We went to see it in a packed theater in IMAX. I mean, just like packed. And people had all kinds of reactions, and there were moments when the audience burst into applause. There were moments when people were crying. It was really
And
powerful, and it was
laughing.
just like, oh yeah, and laughing, definitely
Y'all smell
laughing.
something? Y'all smell something? No, no, no. I think I shot myself.
Just
Best
like
line.
so good, so good,
I'm
and
sorry, but Delta Slim was way far away one of the funniest damn characters in that whole movie.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, like even not even, but we went to see Final Destination Bloodlines, and a sixth movie in a series, and it has by far the most complex story. It has a really compelling family drama at the heart of it.
Mhm.
It's an exceptionally well-made film and an exceptionally well-made horror movie. You look at Scream 6, again, a sixth movie in an established franchise. In a lot of franchises, by movie six, you would really have ground the
Yeah,
wheels down to the
yeah,
nub,
yeah.
you know.
That horse is well and truly dead.
Yeah. Really compelling drama, compelling family drama, really good stuff. And it's because horror presents these new ways, like you said, to talk about these like really intimate stories about what really matters to us. What are we actually willing to fight for? Every genre out there, especially like the sci-fi action genre, which I love, but like the film industry for decades has been really interested in showing us stories of people who are looking for the opportunity to die for something. And horror is uniquely about people who
Survival.
want to live for
Hmm.
Yeah.
something.
Hmm.
Like horror gives us heroes who have something to live for.
Hmm.
And it's unlike almost everything else in popular media in that regard. And
Yep.
I just
Hmm.
think that's a more interesting story every time.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. Is there anything else about Children of Solitude you want the world to know? And I know there's probably plenty.
I could talk for days, so you should stop me.
All right. I want to read a copy. Full stop.
Okay,
Are you ready for our get to know you questions?
I am.
Take it
All
away,
right. Well,
Bez.
before we get right into that, just remember if you're enjoying this content and you like what we're doing here, please like, subscribe, comment, do all the things that everybody always asks you to do on these channels. And if you're really want to support us, definitely go to our Patreon at patreon.com/podcast, or you can do one-time donation to help keep the lights on and keep things running because there are costs involved with all that we do here. And any little bit helps. You know, you find a couple quarters in the couch. Hey, throw it our way. No amount is too small. We will humbly accept all of it and thank you very graciously for it. So, with that in mind, let's get to our rapid fire questions. Can you name a movie that was better than the book?
Yes, I had to debate with myself different answers to this, and the answer that I ended up settling on is Reanimator.
Oh,
Yeah, because Reanimator is more or less an adaptation of an H.P. Lovecraft story called oh, give me just a second. It is named Herbert West Reanimator. And I mean, like, it's fine as Lovecraft stories go. I love cosmic horror, and there are Lovecraft stories that I really enjoy, but also Lovecraft himself was a pretty atrocious person in his attitudes. And it's really hard to enjoy a lot of his
yeah.
stuff these days.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway, because, notoriously racist. But uh, Herbert West Reanimator is a fun story, but Reanimator, the movie, is a radically better version of the same idea.
Nice.
Excellent. All right. Well, which fictional character would you most like to be friends with?
Jadzia Dax from Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Ah, interesting choice. Great.
She has been it all. She has done it all. She has seen it all. She has 6 or 7 lifetimes of experience and good stories. And she cracks wise. She's smart as a whip. She takes no shit. She knows what she wants in the world, and she's hella fun at parties. Of course, I want to be friends with her.
Right,
My
exactly.
alternative, my alternative would be Daria Morgendorffer, who I realize is in many ways the opposite of that, except that she is still whip smart and has lots of cracking wise. So you can see what's important to me.
Right. Well, that would be an interesting dinner party, the three of you all by itself. All right. Well, what's the most fascinating fact that you know?
This is related to my day job,
Okay.
but I'm not the person who did this research. This is just research with which I'm familiar. According to research that has been conducted over the last 5 to 7 years, any topic that is even slightly controversial on the internet, the conversation is driven 30 to 50% by bots
Oh,
that have been created to sow division
mhm.
in our culture. And
Thank
it
you, Russia.
started, yeah, right. And it started in the 2010s with botnets that were being trained using Star Wars.
Hmm.
People were developing these botnets to seed divisive commentary in online conversations. And the topic that was most frequently used to train those botnets was Star Wars. And that's also a lot of when online, like, really quote unquote rabid fandom started happening.
Hmm.
So if you can believe that conversations about something as theoretically innocuous as Star Wars are, and the hostility of those online conversations is being driven by people who have chosen to use botnets to make those conversations more hostile,
Mm,
Hmm.
then you can imagine how much of the conversation around anything more serious is also being
already
driven by
amplified. Right.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, COVID measures in 2020, there were studies that showed, and there are techniques in computer science for determining whether a poster is a bot or not. And those techniques are pretty reliable. And so in 2020, as much as 60% of the online commentary opposed to COVID containment measures was bot driven.
Do you want me to tag this episode with sex worker or no?
Well, it doesn't matter to me.
Just based off of this fact you just shared, I'm like, maybe we'll get more ears on it and more ears on your books.
Well,
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Whatever you think is going to result in more people buying a book, I'm down with.
All right.
Right? Okay. Yeah, right
Yeah,
there.
Let's put
Uh,
this research to work.
yeah.
yeah.
Shameless
It's
plugs. All right. So, what was your favorite subject in school?
music. Yeah, I was a band nerd.
Nice.
Yeah, I was a big time band nerd.
What did you
So,
play?
oh, mostly trumpet. I also
Okay.
played French horn, clarinet, saxophone, occasionally baritone, and I tried flute, but it gave me major like head spinnies.
Mm.
I love it. There's a YouTuber by the name of Molly Boy TV. That's the name of his channel, and he's I don't know if he's Gen Z. He might be millennial because he's in his mid to late 20s. But he is reacting to music from our generation and stuff. And he just did one with Deborah Harry and Blondie, and he was just blown away by the band. And I kind of laughed and I turned to my husband and I said, the funny thing about it is that he's just enamored with her. He thinks she's great. He thinks the band's great, which is all wonderful. I said, but the really funny thing is people don't know about Deborah Harry usually is that she's a classically trained trombonist.
I would never have guessed.
I
That's
know
amazing.
nobody does, but she
Hmm.
is. She knows how to play the fuck out of the trombone.
Yeah, we went to see um, the last time that the original ensemble toured, which was a few years ago. We when they had their most recent album come out, we
Right.
went to see them play, and Blondie. They played a local amphitheater, and Garbage opened for them. And let me tell you, that was a hell of a show.
I believe it. I
Hmm.
Yeah,
totally believe it.
it was like 3 weeks before she turned 70, Deborah Harry,
Uh-huh.
and she's just out there rocking her ass off.
And she's stunning to this
Oh,
day. Absolutely
so
stunning. It's
talented.
like, girl, what Elizabeth Bathory bathwater are you lying in?
Yeah, it was
All right.
amazing.
All right. So moving on. Before making a telephone call, do you rehearse what you're going to say?
Girl, I practiced my answers to these questions.
Well, that nailed that one. What current event or causes are you most passionate about?
Oh, there are so many. First of all, the attack on trans people.
Yeah.
They have figured out, by they, I mean the fascists, have figured out that the playbook that they tried against us in the 80s didn't work because too many people knew one of us. And they have decided that not enough people know a trans person or
Mm-hmm.
know that they know a
Mm-hmm.
trans person and that they can get away with it this time. This time it'll work, that there will
And
not be
shame
that
on
sort
those
of,
other gays out there who are transphobic or
yes,
uphold all that bullshit. You know better. You know better.
yes,
Sit the fuck back down. Yeah, I
yes.
totally with you.
Yeah.
All
My
right.
other one is access to democracy.
Yes. Yes. I think that's on everybody's bingo
Yeah.
card now. It's like
Yeah.
it's engraved and it's not just written on the
Hmm.
card.
I used to be an election judge, and there are a lot of insidious ways that
Oh
people,
yeah.
fascists, are trying to keep people away from the ballot box now.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, if you could visit anywhere in the world, where would that be?
In the sense that time and space are essentially interchangeable, I'm going to say that I would really love to visit San Francisco in 1999.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay. I was there.
Anything specific about that?
It would be fascinating to witness the tech bubble there
Oh yeah.
firsthand. It
Hmm.
would also be fascinating to witness the 2000 New Year's
Hmm.
there, I think, because there was so much just like weird shit in the air.
Hmm.
And I feel like that would be a place where the weird shit quotient would be really premium.
Yeah,
Also,
we do
because
weird.
my
We do
next,
weird really well.
yeah, and because my next book is going to be set in San Francisco in 1999. So I would love to do it for research.
There you go.
Nice.
There you
Yeah.
go. Okay, who, if anyone, was your first celebrity crush?
Equal tie between Bo and Luke Duke.
Okay, okay,
I was a Dukes of Hazzard kid.
okay. What's your personal favorite recipe that you make, and are you willing to share it with us?
Absolutely, yes, to answer the first question. And that is cast iron skillet cornbread.
Oh,
Ooh.
whoa, there you go.
So good. And there are specific techniques that make it even better that are not difficult. And I was taught were a secret of the place where I grew up, and I do not believe in gatekeeping, so I happily give that recipe out.
Ah, okay, Vance, you got your next cooking to do.
Yep. Email it to me.
I will.
All right, well, you made it through the list. Bravo.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
So are you on a promotion circuit for your books? Are you writing something new? What's going on? What's next?
Yes and yes. So I'm doing this because we were in the middle of moving. There are a lot of like promotional things that you just don't have time to do.
Sure.
But next week, I'm going to be doing on the 25th, I'll be doing a book talk at a local public library about it.
Nice.
And I am going to be getting it up on NetGalley at some point. I kind of wanted to do that with an arc, but the publisher was like, off. So we'll see. And then I've am planning to do a couple of like Pride events, a couple of conventions in the region over the course of the summer. And in September, I will be at Killer Pride, which is a queer horror convention in
Ooh.
Williamsburg, Virginia. If you're
Oh.
familiar with
Ooh,
Scares That Care, that's it's also referred to as AuthorCon. They do a horror convention that is like nationally known every year
neat.
in Williamsburg in the spring. And this year, for the first time, they're doing specifically a queer horror convention in the same place, run by the same people. Benefits really amazing charity. And that is going to be called Killer Pride. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to
Oh,
be really like steeping in the queer horror soup for a
I
couple of
love
days.
that.
I'm going to really
That's
enjoy that.
awesome.
Yeah.
Where is the best place for people to follow you and keep up with updates to all of these?
Probably Blue Sky.
Nice.
If you go to michaelgwilliamsbooks.com, then I have a
The
socials
links.
page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And B Sky is like where I am me.
Hmm.
And I participate in a lot of horror writer stuff, like Horror Writers Chat is a really fun weekly chat thing on B Sky.
Nice.
So that's where I am really, really active. And my next thing is going to be a retelling of The Great Gatsby set in the tech world of San Francisco in 1999 with a horror sci-fi element. So it's going to be a lot of
Ooh.
fun. Yeah. And it's like
Ooh.
super queer. I've made everybody gay.
Oh, yeah.
Because you read The Great Gatsby and you're just like, come the fuck on.
I know, I know. Yeah, I know. Talk about straight washing.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a lot of fun doing notes for that and doing some research for that. And I have a friend who lived in San Francisco in 99 who's offered me a lot of weird tidbits of
You
information.
can always hit me up too. So.
Yeah, there we go. Hey. Yeah.
So do you have a soft future projection date for when that's going to be published?
No idea.
Okay.
I do. There's a publisher that I've wanted to work with for years who was interested in it.
Hmm.
And I really love the small press world. And so I'm going to pitch it to them when it's done. But I am. Writing time is difficult enough to come by that I don't like to pitch stuff until it's finished
Oh yeah, that's
so
fair.
that I can know that it's done. Otherwise, it's just like very anxiety making to try to work on stuff. But I'm
Mm.
also the sort of person who has too many ideas. So, like, I'm writing that, and then the next thing after that, I'm writing another Appalachian cosmic horror novel called The Comeback Kids. And then it's just going to be about spooky children. And then after that, I'm going to write a horror musical romance novel.
Ooh.
And I have small press publishers that I know who are all interested in, like, there's one for each of those. So I know what I'm doing for like the next 3 years. Who knows what's going to happen?
Love it. Love it. Do you have any final words of wisdom?
Uh, I don't know. There's some part of your life that you as a writer have thought, I really wish that I had ever seen something like this in a book so that I would know that it's okay that it happened to me too, or that I did that too. And that means you need to write the book about that.
That part.
Mm. All right, we want to extend a huge thank you to Michael G. Williams for coming back and sharing his amazing works with us. Michael, thank you so very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Don't make it so long between visits.
Yeah, 2022, come on.
I don't write fast enough.
Oh, all right, well, it sounds like
Just
you've
come
got
on and chat.
several lined up, though.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. If you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. This show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye bye now.
What's that?
Closing time. The bum's rush and melody, dear.